Self-respect is a quiet force. It does not shout, it does not demand applause, and it rarely announces its presence to the world. It simply lives inside a person like a steady flame that refuses to be blown out by the winds of other people's opinions. In a small town surrounded by dusty roads and whispering trees lived a young woman named Eva. She was known by many faces in the town, some called her kind, others called her distant, and a few believed she was proud. But none of them truly understood the simple truth about her. Eva had learned the value of respecting herself, even when the world misunderstood it. Eva had not always been this way. There was a time when she bent herself into shapes that pleased others. She smiled when she was hurt, stayed silent when she was disrespected, and carried the weight of other people's expectations on her shoulders like invisible chains. She believed that being accepted meant giving pieces of herself away. For years, she tried to be everything people wanted her to be, gentle when they demanded softness, agreeable when they expected obedience, and invisible when they preferred not to hear her voice. But every time she ignored her own feelings to please someone else, something inside her grew quieter. One evening, as the sun faded into a pale orange horizon, Eva sat by the window of her small home and watched the wind move through the tall grass outside. The grass bent easily under the force of the wind, swaying from side to side without resistance. At first glance, it seemed peaceful, but something about it made her uneasy. She realized that she had lived her life like that grass, always bending, always adjusting, always surrendering to the force around her. She wondered what it would feel like to stand firm like the old oak tree at the edge of the field, the one that never seemed to bow no matter how strong the wind became. That thought stayed with her for many days. It echoed quietly in her mind whenever someone spoke to her in a careless tone or expected her to accept less than she deserved. For the first time in her life, Eva began to question things she had always tolerated. She noticed how often people mistook her silence for agreement. She noticed how easily kindness could be taken for weakness. And slowly, she realized that respecting herself did not mean becoming cold or unkind. It meant recognizing her own worth and refusing to let anyone treat it as something small. The change in her did not happen all at once. It began with small moments, almost invisible ones. One day, when someone spoke to her in a way that felt dismissive, she calmly ended the conversation instead of pretending it did not bother her. Another time, she chose to spend an evening alone rather than sit in the company of people who made her feel smaller than she truly was. These choices were quiet and simple, but each one felt like reclaiming a small piece of herself. People around her began to notice the difference. Some admired it, though they rarely said so out loud. Others felt uncomfortable, as if her quiet confidence was a mirror reflecting something they did not wish to see. A few accused her of changing too much. "You used to be easier to be around," someone told her one day. Eva simply smiled, not with bitterness but with understanding. She realized that when you begin to respect yourself, those who benefited from your silence often feel the loss of their comfort. There were moments when doubt tried to return. Late at night, when the town fell silent and the stars stretched across the sky, Eva sometimes wondered if she was being too distant, too firm, too unwilling to bend. But then she would remember how it felt to ignore her own voice for the sake of peace. She remembered the quiet exhaustion of pretending that everything was fine when it was not. And each time that memory surfaced, she knew she could never return to the person she had once been. Self-respect, she discovered, is not about proving your worth to others. It is about recognizing it within yourself. It is about understanding that your thoughts, your feelings, and your boundaries deserve the same care you give to everyone else. For Eva, this realization felt like stepping into sunlight after years of living in the shade. Over time, her life grew quieter but more genuine. The people who remained in her world were those who valued her honesty and respected the boundaries she had set. Conversations became more meaningful, laughter more sincere. She no longer felt the need to shrink herself to fit into spaces where she did not belong. Instead, she allowed herself to exist fully, without apology. One afternoon, as she walked along the path near the old oak tree, Eva paused and looked up at its wide branches. The tree had stood there for longer than anyone in the town could remember. Storms had passed through the land countless times, bending the grass and scattering leaves across the fields. Yet the oak tree remained steady, its roots deep in the earth. Eva realized that self-respect is much like those roots. It anchors a person, giving them the strength to stand firm when the winds of doubt, criticism, or pressure try to push them away from who they truly are. Without those roots, a person can easily be carried wherever the wind blows. But with them, they remain grounded, steady, and unshaken. As the wind moved gently through the branches above her, Eva felt a quiet sense of peace. She understood that respecting herself did not make her distant from the world, it simply meant she no longer allowed the world to decide her value. Her worth was not determined by approval, praise, or acceptance. It existed within her, steady and unchanging. From that day forward, Eva lived with a quiet certainty. She spoke with honesty, walked with calm confidence, and treated herself with the same kindness she had always offered to others. She did not need the world to agree with her choices, because she had learned something far more important: the strongest form of dignity is the one you give yourself. And in that quiet understanding, Eva discovered a freedom she had never known before, the freedom of living a life guided not by fear of judgment, but by the steady, unbreakable foundation of self-respect.